if you're starting, if you're thinking of building a stereo system, there are a couple of reasons why you should probably start with a bookshelf, a pair of bookshelf speakers, rather than going big, floor standards, for a start. Generally speaking, bookshelf speakers are less expensive, more affordable, so to speak. Not in all cases, but that's not the only reason. There are many other reasons, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you're happening on this channel for the first time, my name is Owen, and this is Unconventional Sound. All right, let's get into it. For many newcomers to high fidelity audio, floor standing speakers seem like the obvious choice. They look impressive. They promise big sound, and they carry that aura of serious listening gear, if you know what I mean. Yet for someone just beginning to develop their ear, bookshelf speakers, in my opinion, often provide a more rewarding and educational, and I dare say a cost-effective entry point into the hobby. Now, understanding why requires looking beyond size and output, and instead focusing on how people learn to listen, how rooms behave, and how systems evolve over time. All right? Bookshelf speakers encourage a new audiophile to engage with the fundamentals of sound. Because they cannot rely on sheer physical presence or, overwhelming bass output, they highlight the subtleties that define good listening. For example, imaging, tonal balance, room interaction, and placement. They reward careful positioning and thoughtful experimentation, helping a beginner understand how small adjustments can transform the listening experience, so to speak. In this way, bookshelves act more like a prime lens on a new camera, for a new filmmaker. They teach the craft before the gear becomes a distraction, if you know what I mean. I'm into cameras, so I can relate. Now, bookshelves also offer better sound per dollar. Now, at equivalent price points, bookshelf speakers often deliver higher quality sound than their floor standing counterparts at equivalent price points. Keep that in mind. The reason is simple. Larger cabinets cost more to build. When manufacturers must stretch out a budget, to create a tall enclosure, compromises often appear in the drivers, in the crossover, the crossover components or cabinet rigidity, so to speak. Bookshelf speakers, being small and less material intensive, allow more of the cost to go directly into the sound critical parts. As a result, a 600 pair of bookshelf speakers frequently outperforms a 600 pair of tower speakers in clarity, neutrality, and imaging. Now, most beginners do not have a dedicated listening room. They have listening rooms. They have living rooms, that's what I want to say. Bedrooms or multi-purpose spaces with furniture, reflective surfaces and unpredictable acoustics. All right. Bookshelf speakers are far more forgiving in these environments, right? They can be placed closer to the walls, in many cases, and adjusted easily on stands, and it kind of fine-tune them, towing and that kind of stuff, and with different height changes. Floor standing speakers, by contrast, can overwhelm small or medium rooms with excessive bass, creating muddiness that frustrates rather than inspires, if you know what I mean. Bookshelf speakers simply adapt better to spaces most people actually live in. Starting with bookshelf speakers allows a new audiophile to build the system gradually and intentionally, right? One can begin with, say, with a clean, accurate stereo setup, then add a subwoofer later, upgrade the stands, or eventually move the bookshelves into a secondary system. Floor standing speakers, while impressive, these towers, they tend to lock the listener into a larger, heavier, and more comprehensive path from the outset. Bookshelf speakers, in my opinion, offer flexibility, letting the system evolve as the listener's taste and experience kind of deepens. Because bookshelf speakers have smaller cabinets and closer closer driver spacing, they often excel at imaging, the ability to place instruments and voices precisely within the sound stage. They also tend to disappear, more easily, creating that magical, moment when the speakers vanish and the room fills with a performance, if you know what I mean. For new audiophile, this experience is transformative. It's the moment that turns casual interest into passion, and bookshelves deliver it with surprising consistency. Many beginners assume that floor standing speakers eliminate the need for a subwoofer. In reality, even tower speakers benefit from a well-integrated sub, which can extend the bass, and reduce distortion, and kind of smooth out the room response, so to speak. Bookshelf speakers paired with a good subwoofer often outperform towers in every category except maximum volume. This combination gives newcomers the best of both worlds: accuracy and finesse from the bookshelves, and controlled low-end authority from the sub. And you may know this about me, I love a sub. Bookshelf speakers invite new audiophiles into the hobby with openness, rather than intimidation, if you know what I mean. They don't demand a large room or, a large budget, all right, or a perfect setup. Instead, they reward curiosity, experimentation, and patience. They encourage the listener to develop their ear, understand their preferences, and build a system that reflects who they are rather than what the industry tells them they should buy. Right? Now, for someone beginning their journey, that gentle, rewarding introduction can make all the difference. That's my take today on, bookshelf speakers and why I think why I think that they are the best way to get into, creating a new stereo setup, so to speak. If you're just thinking of delving into this world of two-channel listening, I would encourage you to, if you have the money to go towers, then it's okay. But if you don't, and you're just dipping your feet into this world of two-channel audio, I would encourage you to try, a pair of decent bookshelf speakers, with a nice little stereo amplifier to drive it, whether it be, an analog system or an all-in-one system, with a streamer built in, something like that. Yeah, that's my take today. So what are your thoughts? Do you think that, the better way to go, or the better way to start, like I am emphasizing here, is going down the route of the bookshelf speaker? What's your take on it? Or are you the kind of person who think one should save up as much money and just go big or go home? What's your take? Regardless, let me hear your thoughts in the comments below. And until the next video, you take care of yourself, and thank you so much for listening.